there are no words, and we'll talk about that part a little later, that can express the gratitude and the love that we have for all the things that Miss Wynn has done in her career. You saw this. I had you to read all of that so you'll know who's in front of you. Most of you already know. But I want to share with you the type of heart. You read that sentence in there that her philanthropy is indicative of her heart. She has a heart for people. And I can just share with you my experience. My first year of teaching at UNLV, I asked Miss Wynn, would she speak in my class? And she says, yes. And I was floored. I was expecting, well, you know, as she is now, she's very, very busy, because she is a leader of people. And Miss Wynn, that's what I talk to my students. When I talk to my students, I say, leaders of people, may I have your attention? I want them to realize that one day they're going to have the accountability and the responsibility of being leaders of people in middle management and above. Well, she spoke in my class, and then I was supposed to surprise her with some people in the back, but that's what happens with surprises. But it still was a surprise. But they are going to come up and say something at the very end. So the gentleman that's back in the back, we had a movement. Everyone that's back there, NBA ball players, guys that are leaders of industry, Jackie Robinson, who's building an arena, but we'll talk about that a little later. All of these guys have been, in a major way, been touched by Miss Wynn. We had a fundraiser at one of her hotels years ago, and Miss Wynn spoke for our organization. Our organization was a group of former athletes that raised money to send other athletes back to school, to not only get their baccalaureates, but their masters, and some got their doctorate. Well, without this fundraiser that we had at Miss Wynn's hotel, it was a Golden Nugget, do you remember that? Downtown, we were able to raise enough money to have our alumni games. Our alumni games was a big fundraiser for for athletes to go back to school and get their degrees. But I want to share with you that without her help, she doesn't know this, but through our organization, we sort of embarrassed the NCAA to add a 5th year to student athletes going back to school. Prior to us sending athletes back to school and getting high-profile coverage in national magazines of what we were doing and sharing with the NCAA, that it was very difficult with our research, very difficult for a student athlete to graduate in 4 years. It's difficult for a traditional student to graduate in 4 years. Without your help, there are a lot of student athletes that do not know where this all come from. It wasn't the NCAA. It was us really shining a light right here at UNLV, and the gentleman that you're going to meet at the very end, that help propel a 5th year for student athletes to graduate. So give Miss Wynn a hand, because I'm going to tell you, that event that when you have an event at Miss Wynn's property, governors, senators, everybody show up. and we were able to raise a lot of money because of that. And from Miss Wynn speaking at a rookie instructor's class years ago, and I could not. People were just crashing my class because they found out that Miss Wynn was speaking in my class. So I would look out and I say, "Are you in my class?" But anyway, it was just like it is today. There are no words, Elaine, that we could say to show you or tell you our gratitude of what you have done in your life, how you have helped the least of these, how you have just helped people. So I'm going to take you outside of the world, and I'm going to tell you an Avatar. Did you see the movie Avatar? Well, in the movie Avatar, when the characters wanted to show how much love they had for each other, how much admiration, how much care they have for an individual, they would say, "I see you. I see you." And so, class, if you will, stand to your feet and give Miss Wynn a CSN hospitality welcome. Miss Wynn.
What was supposed to be a lovely morning class at the community college, I didn't expect to be such an emotional tribute. And I'm so deeply touched. Thank you for that. And it just goes to show you that you can plant seeds all over the place, and it does take everyone, though, to cultivate the seeds. So if I played any part at all, it was just being a farmer. And I think that we're all capable of doing that. So I know that I have the option of moving around and such, so I probably will. And let me begin by saying what a gorgeous facility. I have not been out to this campus in a while, and approaching it was so beautiful and lovely an experience to see it. I had occasion to go to a library the other day on the east side of town that I had not been to, and boy, Las Vegas is continuing to build and grow and develop in areas that are so wonderful for this community. But thank you for bringing me out here. Dr. Wright had extended this invitation repeatedly for the last couple of years, and I apologize, Lonnie, it's taken me this long to get back. But the good news is maybe I got a little smarter, so what I can share with the class might be a bit more valuable. He also wanted me to, of course, understand who this group is and that you're focused on hospitality and careers in hospitality, and perhaps direct my remarks to that. But I think what's important for you to know is that what I'm going to share with you today applies to every career and every situation, I believe. And that's the benefit of getting older. One of the nice things, and probably one of the few only things that's good about getting older, is hopefully you acquire wisdom and you create a personal philosophy that really does simplify things. You know, I could have come here with a long list of things I think you should do that will gain your attention with people, but it really is, I think, a lot simpler than that. So I would say that first and foremost, at lunch this weekend, we were reminiscing with some colleagues about the old days when people would think about careers, and they would think about them in sort of long term. You know, what do I want to do in my life? Certainly I want to do something I enjoy and I love that will give me and my family financial stability, that will allow me to fulfill my empowerment and excel up a ladder, to earn well enough and at some point have a good benefit package and a retirement package. Well, that's not how it is these days. People are demonstrating that they're doing careers that last maybe 3 years at most. It's sort of the Generation X, Y, Zers, whatever the heck you all are. And everybody feels like they're entrepreneurial and they want to develop an app and they want to go and do this, and they don't really think in terms of a long-range career. For you, I'm hopeful that hospitality is that thing, because for me, of course, it was the secret to the wonderful life that I've led and the ability to be in a position like this. And even though there's a lot of drudgery and toiling in any job, in hospitality, it's fun. You're there to make guests' experience enjoyable. And so the overall goal is to be involved in a business that engages in making people happy. And that's a pretty good thing to be doing, I think. So what's important to know? I would say first and foremost, and this is not any brilliant observation, is that whatever it is you're doing, you have to master the job. You have to learn the technique of what your job description entails. And certainly knowledge is power. The degree to which you apply yourself, become educated in the subject, get deeply involved in the research and ongoing information that evolves as you're in your job, that's what's required. You got to show up and do the job first. That's the technical part of the job. But that necessarily is not the most important part of your job as you are going up the ladder and aspiring to leadership. I will give you a little story that is very close to home. Our oldest daughter, Kevin, began a different kind of career when she was young and moved away from Las Vegas. She went to work for a talent agent in a very she talent agency in LA, and she was an assistant. I spoke to her. She called me up about 4 or 5 weeks after this job. I said, well, how's it going? She said, I'm bored. I said, why are you bored? She said, because I know everything about this job. I said, oh, you do? So, tell me about that. Well, I know how to take messages. I know how to do scheduling. I know how to connect my boss to people. And so she's describing, the technical aspects of the job. I said, oh, okay, that's terrific. I said, what if he asks you your opinion about something? What would you say? Well, blah, 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 I don't know what you mean. And I said, of course you don't know what I mean, because you've only been there for 5 weeks. I said, more than just knowing how to perform the job is being there enough days that you gain experience in making decisions. And with each decision you make, you get better informed on judgment and how to make good judgment decisions. Then she went on to say, well, the guy really is a creep. I said, well, if he's a creep, then let's go to the next conversation. You're working for a company that is paying you a salary. You owe them, at least tacitly, some kind of loyalty. Now, you either quit the job because you don't approve of your boss and the company, or else you better have a change of attitude because that's not cool. Now, fortunately, my daughter was in a position where she could quit. This was not necessarily a matter of survival for her or living paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to make that judgment call. But I would say that anybody that would be forced to stay in a position where they're not working for a company that they respect and admire is going to have problems further down the line. Which takes us into the next point that I would make. And that has to do with character. It's everything. It's not just something. It's not just an add-on. The personal values that you have, that you hold dear, and hopefully they're the ones that tell us the difference between right and wrong and good and evil. Naturally, there are moments when we're puzzled and we're not sure about that, but for the most part, we pretty much know. Those are your guiding principles and should be in everything you do, not just with your family, but certainly in your career. And you have to really think about, am I being authentically me? Am I a good person? If I'm a good person, I want to be associated with friends and people who are good people. And if possible, I sure as heck would like to work for a company that represents my values. So in a real world experience, let me give you an example. As you are moving up the ladder, let's assume that you're skilled, you're working for a company you like, you feel confident about yourself, but you're just sort of on a beginning trajectory. Here's a scene that could play out, and I'll make my observation when I finish with the dramatization of it. Let's say a supervisor calls you in and says, listen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we've been notified by some people that so-and-so on your team is a difficult colleague to work with. It really would be helpful if you could share with me how you feel about it. Now, here's your dilemma. You don't have to participate. If you're uncomfortable and you don't want to make a judgment call or you don't know, the way you handle this situation is going to be very telling. You always have the option of saying, you know, I'm sorry, but I really don't have anything to contribute to this conversation. I really don't know anything about this. Or you can say, which would be honest, I really feel uncomfortable being put in the middle of this situation. These are all the people I have to work with and my colleagues, and it puts me in an awkward place. Or you can say, if it's true, I would be most appreciative if this could be a confidential conversation. Although I've never experienced any kind of aggressive or nasty or mean-spirited behavior from this colleague, other friends of mine or colleagues in the department have told me about it. So you see, there's a variety of scenarios that are going on there, and the way you are communicating and making a judgment about what to do will be perceived by your supervisor in a lot of ways. Now, assuming you've got a supervisor that's reliable and steadfast, they're going to look at you differently, and they're going to say, aside from you knowing how to perform your job well, you are capable of making good judgments and good decisions. And not only that, depending on what your answer is, you're revealing that you are a person of integrity and that you care about a variety of scenarios. So that is just a small example as you navigate this very tricky world in which we live in, of having to work more and more, especially in hospitality, with groups of people and teams of people. Now, I'm not talking about people that are going to be in financial analysis or in, cubbies doing very specific scientific applications. We're talking about people that may be in food and beverage, may be in hotel operations, may be in convention sales. We all have to just get along with one another in those environments, and your judgments that are formed by everyday life's experience make you more valuable. So remember that. Combined with how much you bring to the job in terms of your knowledge of that job, your willingness to put yourself out there and continue to be technically proficient, but the best application of all in this exercise is what kind of judgment do I have, how and when do I apply it, and am I proud of it? And again, I go back to what I said in the beginning. If that's not appreciated and valued, then maybe that's not the company you should be working for. Very, very personal stuff, very heavy-duty stuff. So I would then segue into a little bit of a different conversation about the world that you are now working in, which is topsy-turvy, upside down, but especially in America. And this has been on my mind a lot because of the organizations that I'm involved with. It clearly is something that's always in the forefront of what we think. And that is the changing demography of this country. We now understand that our population mix is changing. It's been predictable. We've known about it for years. Very soon, this country will have a majority of minorities. And as a result, we understand the tensions that are unfolding as we try to understand what that means in the real world. What does it mean in terms of friendships? What does it mean in terms of work? What does it mean in terms of customers? And how are we going to accommodate and adjust to, and more importantly, embrace this new evolution of population trends? When we talk about diversity and inclusivity, that is the thing that's also going to be superimposed on your lives and should be part of your awareness as you're going through your professional training, and understanding that these will present special and different kinds of problems or will call upon different kinds of solutions. But go into this with your eyes wide open and understand that if America is really going to fulfill the promise that our founding fathers made, all of those old white men, that we are going to live up to the ideals of welcoming all and using our diversity as our strength, not our weakness, then you are part of the story of evolving democracy. So I truly hope that that's something you'll consider. And then finally, before I let you ask me a bunch of questions, you see I didn't have a lot of very specific things to tell you. When we talk about inclusivity, one of the things that is of special note right now, and this is for all the ladies in the room, is that it is now time for women. And when I say it's time for women, I don't mean it's time for women at the exclusion of men. It is time for women to help lead all of us in understanding their power. We're seeing it in policymaking. We're seeing it not so much in the boardrooms, but increasingly more in educational institutions. I believe the majority of students in higher ed are now female. And I have just finished a book called The Moment of Lift by Melinda Gates. It is my new manifesto, and I would urge you all to read this book, men and women alike. And it is a very scientific treatise on when women take charge of a lot of decision-making, the entire universe improves. Oh, yeah. Come on, men. Specifically, she talks about the work of the Gates Foundation in the areas, especially in Africa, of extreme poverty, and the work that they've done in the very most basic things about birth control, where women who did not have birth control would wind up having 6, 7, 8 children. How in the world would you not expect for them to remain impoverished? But in areas where they were able to go and make a change and explain it to the men and have it be supported by the dads, all of a sudden, a woman could handle her 2 children very well, continue on with the work in the relationship, whatever her physical labors demanded, and it improved the family and the community. It is a magnificent book, not only about those people, but about Melinda Gates herself, who said that she was so enlightened by what she observed that she applied these principles at home. She had her husband take the kids to school every day, and a lot of her friends said to her, "You have no idea what you just did for us as a family. I've been asking my husband to drop the kids off at school, and there's always been pushback. But now I say to them, if Bill Gates can take his kids to school, you can take our kids to school." And of course, the father started to do it and discovered that they really enjoyed it. And it improved their paternity, it improved their marital relationships. And so they're just little examples of the benefit of acknowledging that women do have a tremendous amount to contribute. We are on the rise right now. We're seeing it in the political arena, but it's demonstrated everywhere. And I think men should not be challenged by this, but should understand that embracing the equality of women means that all of us are going to do better. So that's all I have in my head this morning, and I'm just so delighted to be here with all of you, and I'm more than happy to answer questions or do whatever else it is you would like, Dr. Wright.
Like, what areas do you think are like really good for business, basically?
That is a very clinical approach to business. People are successful when they follow their natural passion and instinct. Businesses are successful all across the field. And to say, what's the most profitable business to go into? Well, right now we know it's technology. But if you're not technologically proficient like me, I am a total Luddite geek, that would not be a choice I would make. What would guide me would be the things that I have a natural affinity for, something that resonates. And it is very difficult when you're a young person to sort that all out, and I don't think you should be worried if it hasn't occurred to you. In the old days, when survival was the key, it's where can I get a job? I need to get a job to pay the rent and get the groceries, and while I'm doing this job, I'm going to keep my eyes open to see what else is out there that might be appealing to me. Now, if you're in a job and you're liking that job and you're liking that company, you may have, lit on something that was terrific. But in our case, I'll give you an example. When Steve and I were young, Steve's dad ran a bingo business in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. That's right outside D.C. And while he and I were going to college, separate universities, we would go and run this bingo on the weekends. It was a form of gambling because it was cash, but it was called entertainment in the States where it was. When we had an opportunity to come to Las Vegas, where gambling was legitimate, and where we kind of already had some experience, that was a magnet to pull us here. But we also had lived in Miami Beach, so we were exposed to beautiful resort hotel properties. So we had a combination of the resort business and the so-called gambling business. And it seemed like, well, that's what's of interest to us, and that's what we want to do, and here we come.
I actually have 2 questions. The first one would be, what do you think is your biggest accomplishment in the industry of gaming to date? And the second would be, what's your advice to someone who's young that wants to do gaming and hospitality?
Okay. So let's start with the second question. You're doing it. You're in school, you're studying, you're learning, you're letting a lot of different options cross your path and trying to understand where that magnetic field is. And hopefully, if you go through your courses and you do well, there will be a way that you can apply like everybody else does to an HR department. And they're going to look at your credentials, and they're going to discover and make a decision based on a variety of things. It's a competitive field, but you have to come prepared for the job. So I think you're on the right path. You've made a decision about your career trajectory. You're now getting as much education and skill as you can in a formal setting. When you go to get hired, there's always that dialectic. We need someone with more experience. And you say, well, how can I get experience if nobody hires me? You gotta push through that, and if it requires extra skills like interpersonal communication, how do I interview well, that's part of your research, and that's part of your preparation. In terms of what do I think our best accomplishment was, for the series of hotels and properties that we did, it was always driven by the pursuit of excellence and imagination. And fortunately, that seemed to work pretty well. We surrounded ourselves with people who were like-minded in their passion, that wanted to offer unique experiences in magnificent environments that would be unlike anything else that they could experience elsewhere, at least in the totality of it. They may stay at beautiful hotels, they may go and see shows somewhere that are good, but to have the whole assortment and menu delivered with Cirque du Soleil, a lot of decisions made on what can we do that's creative and different and innovative, but always elegant and at the top of our game.
Hi, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. It's an honor. My question would be, what advice would you give to young women who were trying to stand out in male-dominated fields?
Read The Moment of Lift. I mean, there's no substitute for intestinal fortitude. There's no substitute for saying to yourself, you don't have to proclaim it to others, it's a conversation you have with yourself. I am capable, I am competent, I am equal, I can do this, and now it's your job to make everybody else believe it. And don't for a second falter. And if you do research in that area, which would begin with this book, I'm also reading a book on suffragettes and the path to having women get the right to vote, which is also enlightening. It tells you stories about how women had to conduct themselves. The biggest takeaway for me, and it's what Melinda says, is there's power in the sisterhood, that women should not work in isolation, that the more you team up with your colleagues and the ladies who have a similar interest or even dissimilar interest, you will learn from each other how your struggles may be exactly the same or somehow different. You will be reinforcing one another, and that's when you become a powerful entity, when you all say, that happened to you, that happened to me. Well, by golly, we're not going to let that happen again, and let's organize to see how we can fix that. We had, briefly ago, we celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the Women's March, and it was done here in Las Vegas, and all those women that had done the DC March came here for the first anniversary, and the theme was Power to the Polls. And if you don't already know this, guess which is the only state in America that has a majority of women in its state legislature? Guess which state has a majority of the state Supreme Court justices? Guess which congressional representation has 2 female senators, one being the only Hispanic in the Senate, Hispanic woman in the Senate. So if you have intentionality and you're courageous, go you go, girl.
Thank you.
Before I take another question, I know that Dr. Wright alluded to special guests that are here. When I chose my jewelry to wear today, I put on a ring, and it is a USA gold medal basketball championship ring that I was lucky enough to get because of support for USA Basketball. So in case you all don't know, what brought me to education really was my love of basketball. When I first came to Las Vegas, I'd always loved basketball. I was a cheerleader in high school. I had a crush on our high school basketball coach. I went with the center who played on the team. So it was part of my DNA. And I came to Las Vegas, and I'm busy working, and then a friend said, hey, you want to go to the convention center and see the Runnin' Rebels? And I thought, sure, okay, I will. I went to one game, and I was done. I fell so back in love with the game that we bought season tickets and started to attend the games. And fortunately, throughout the years, met a series of the most extraordinary, wonderful men. But because of that connection to UNLV through sports, I got involved with the UNLV Foundation, which was the academic fundraising arm of the university, and got involved in opening the Thomas and Mack Arena. So I was brought to campus to the academic educational side because of my love of basketball. And then, of course, from there, I went K through 12, and my whole life has really been education-centered, but I credit my buddies, some of whom are here today, for that inspiration.
And I think we're going to segue to bringing up some of the real running rebels, the guys that broke all the records for scoring. The first guy with the flowers, This is Sutton Sam Smith. Sutton Sam Smith won, he's in the record books for the first 4-point play in NBA history. Sutton Sam, go on up. You know Flinty Ray Williams, we call him Plenty Ray Williams, because he was one heck of a ball player, defense and offense, worked for the Winns for many years, and I told him I wanted to talk about his basketball background, and he says, no, I'm in the secret witness program. So Flinty Ray Williams, please. The next gentleman is Pastor Richard Box. He pastors a church, a great leader of people. He is my pastor, and it's really strange how things happen. I kind of witnessed to him about Christ, and now he's my pastor. That's how it is. So, Richard Box. Next gentleman, Reggie Theus. Reggie Theus was an NBA coach. He was also a Division I coach, a great ball player from the Bulls. And if it wasn't for Michael Jordan, he would have been the top Bull player. So give a hand to Reggie Theus. Ms. Wynn has had her handprints on all of us. And this next gentleman, Jackie Robinson, he is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He will be building a hotel attached to an arena where I'm not going to say anything else because then he'll hurt me. But anyway, Jackie Robinson was one heck of a ball player. We used to call him Jumping Jack. Now you can't jump higher than a dime. But that's okay. I used to be a running rebel. Now I'm a walking rebel, so don't worry about it. Give a big hand to Mr. Jackie Robinson. We wanted to surprise you. Ms. Wynn, this is from all of my hospitality students, all of these young people here, and I want to say something. I always tell our young ladies that leadership transcends, and I tell all my students, the color of your skin, your gender, your nationality, leadership transcends all of that. So you heard it again. You heard it again from an industry icon. So ladies, I want you to just understand that you can do it. Okay, without any further ado, we have some students here that represents all of our students. And we wanted to share with you how much our hospitality program, thank you for coming out. I know we kind of cut short the questions, but when you brought that up, I thought that was a great way. Jackie Robinson has something to say to you.
Flinty and I have known each other, and Reggie known each other since we've been kids. You know, we all grew up in South Central Los Angeles. None of us had fathers at home. I lost my mother when I was a freshman here in college. I was lost, didn't have a father at all. And Steve and Elaine Wynn has always had their doors open for us. I've done, and myself and Ray, we've done probably almost $1 billion in business up until this point. And I can tell you for sure, if it wasn't for Mrs. Wynn and taking the time to not sometimes, but all the time. They were never too busy. And I always go back and reflect now that that I'm in not their position, but somewhat in a busy position, and someone comes to me and said, listen, I need to have a meeting with you. And I said, well, I'm tired, I'm busy, I got to do these things, whatever. I always reflect back that when we called Elaine Wynn or any of those guys, whatever, they just never, ever told them that they were too busy for us. And it wasn't that they spent 10 minutes or 15 minutes, they would spend hours with us if needed. I've learned everything, and I find myself all the time right now going back and repeating things. I'm just going to do two things that you affected me that I spoke. I came in, I wanted to see Elaine, I sit down and talk to her, and I had an issue. And I was telling Elaine, and I'm just upset with this person I'm working with and everything else, whatever. She says, well, what is the problem? I said, well, I know I'm right about this. I know we did a good job or whatever, from that standpoint. So she said, well, you know what? Stick to your guns. Stick to your guns. And I find myself the other day, I was sitting there, and I was talking to someone, and he came back and said, I'm negotiating with this person who's doing the things, and I've done everything I was supposed to do. And I said, stick to your guns. Stick to your guns. And it was things that was in my ear that was taught to me by them. And it wasn't because they were interested in basketball, it was because of us as individuals. And one other thing that I've been able to raise monies from, on my own, being able to go and present myself and how I needed to do it. And another thing that she probably forgot, that I came in one time and I was talking to her about, I said, Elaine, I said, I can't understand, we've done this, the bank does this, did this, and did that, whatever, we've got this type of money, how come we can't get a line of credit or whatever? And she said, Jackie, what you need to do is put yourself in that person's shoes. And what would you want to see if somebody wanted to borrow money from you? So always be prepared from that. And Mrs. Wynn, I tell you, all the monies I've raised is because everyone always comes back and tells me, Jackie, I can't understand how you are so prepared and detailed and everything else, whatever. And I said, this was a lady from Las Vegas named Mrs. Wynn, who always told me that. So I've been able to raise money on my own because I've always put myself in here and in the back of the mind, make sure you get all the details ready. So when I came to them to borrow money, it wasn't, he said, most people don't come with this type of detail and being prepared. Where did you learn this from? This lady right here. I just want to let you know that it's just not a situation where she says it and she talks, but they lived it. We're the example, us. We're the fruit of you. And I hope we made you proud because we're very, very fortunate to have you as our mentor.
Wow. Good job, Jack. Wow. I'm Flinny Ray Williams, and I've spent my whole adulthood with Elaine Wynn, who's been my best buddy my whole life. She knows that. But, you know,
My son.
you're in the hospitality industry, and this is a great story because, you know, Jack's, if you saw Jerry Maguire, I'm not going to cry. You know, I'm just not going to cry. But Jack told a story, which is, I could go on and on and on about Elaine. But my first years in the casino business, I started off at the Golden Nugget, dealing cards, learning all the games. Then I went from that to a pit boss to a casino executive. So we go from the Golden Nugget over to the Mirage. And so now I think I'm this big executive, all on my laurels, thinking that this is great. And we started to get into the hotel opening, and I kept crying about why it's taking so long for the rooms to get ready because we had all of these special guests and people coming. And then one day, I cried so much that they made me go and spend time with the maids for like 4 or 5 days. So when I came back, a total different thought about how things should go. So when the customers asked me about the maids, I told them, don't ask me. Because to go up there and see the work and see the things that they do and to try to put a bed together and the time that is done and the rooms that it took, I mean, it just opened my eyes about other people in the industry and not about myself. You know, I thought the song was about me, so it just took me a second to understand it. But this has been my life, my whole life. So it's my best friend, So I just want to let you know, if you're in this industry, that sometimes we get caught up into who we are instead of you looking back and seeing what somebody else is doing. It takes everybody to make the whole hotel go. So it's about having the character, and as we talked about, and the passion for people. That's what you have to have if you're going to stay in this industry, because every day aren't great days. Every day aren't great days. And I just want to say one thing. Elaine talked about farmer and, that planting seeds, but for me today, it's every time she speaks, I just feel like a flower that's just been watered. So it's been a great day for me. Thank you.
I'm Reggie Theus. Elaine talked about support, and Jack talked about support. Philanthropist talked about support. I'm sure these guys are talking about support. That's what she has done for all of us. So whenever you get where you're going, remember today, because it'll be your turn to support somebody. And that's what life is about, is seeing it forward, paying it forward. And, I've been fortunate in my life to do a lot of different things. I've had every job. I've had 4 different careers. And she was talking about, I know the one young lady was talking about, jobs that are available. Elaine was talking about what you have to do. And I would say that what's made me successful is, first of all, playing good teammates. I was actually on the team when Sam made that basket. I probably gave him the ball, passed him the ball, and made the basket. But what I would say that is important in success, I remember when I wanted to become a basketball coach. And it was very difficult to get a job. I started off as an AAU basketball coach, coaching high school kids. I volunteered at a D2 school at Cal State LA. I went to every job opportunity that I could to get involved. And ultimately, I ended up working for free, donating as a volunteer. So there's a such thing called sweat equity. You got to put it in. At one point, as I was moving on in this and just figuring out maybe I'm not going to ever get a chance to coach, I went to 4 different colleges, and they were small colleges. And then all of a sudden, I'm coaching AAU ball, which is the small kids. I get hired by the University of Louisville, which was not even something I expected. I got into broadcasting. I was someone that, I'm doing it now. I'm actually doing XM radio, Laker TV stuff. I've done it for a long time. I actually did, to tell you how old I am, I did TNT inside the NBA before Kenny and Charles. Yeah, right? Oh, that means we owe, and you older than me. But I want to tell you that it's, even doing that job, I was told after having a 14-year NBA career that I didn't have enough experience to talk about basketball. How about that? And people give you a lot of, they give you a lot of excuses when they don't want to hire you. Doesn't mean you're not the right person, they're just giving you excuses. You can never allow excuses to be the reason you don't succeed, because there are always going to be doors that are shut in your face. I've had more doors shut in my face than I can remember. But I was willing to do the hard work. I was willing to work for free. I was willing to get out there, and I took every single broadcasting job there was from that point. I was working for ESPN on one weekend. Then I would go the next weekend to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and work for MBT, which is Merchandise Marketing Television, doing CBA games. So I did every job that I possibly could. So never allow the negative to stop you from trying to move forward. And just remember those words, because what she's done for us and her support for me has been amazing, because we know the stories. But it's something I'll just say to all of you guys, just remember this day, because at one point or another, it's going to be your turn to support someone else. Okay? Thank you.
Well, you can tell we're all storytellers. And we could literally talk to you for another hour or two. But I want to say something very quickly. And there's a saying that says that people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. 1993, maybe 92, Flinny Ray's wife had passed away. It was stunning to all of us. Stunning, shocking, stunning. I was over his house just hanging around. I was a new pastor. He had asked me to do the funeral, and I don't even think I had done a funeral. And I'm like, okay. I was over there, and Miss Wynn was there. And she was in the kitchen, and she was washing the dishes. And I remember I looked, and I went, wow. And Flinny Ray said, Mrs. Wynn, I forget what he called you, Elaine, whatever. You don't have to do that. You don't have to wash the dishes. And she goes, I know. And she kept right on washing. I'll never forget that picture. Because people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And so I just want to leave you with that. You may not even remember that picture, but I will never forget it. Here's what it taught me, real quickly. It just taught me that a true leader pays attention to the needs of others, not just their performance. Especially when there's a real need for a human touch. And sometimes the greatest leadership thing you can do is go wash some dishes.
Class, Dr. Linda Young would like to say a few words. She is a part of our educational system, and give her a hand, please. She has been a tireless leader for education in this valley for, I don't want to say how many years. Okay.
Well, first of all, I just can't tell you enough how proud we are of you. So give yourselves a applause. And I want to say, I've known Elaine Wynn for so many years. We were on so many committees, and when they honored you with naming the Elaine Wynn Elementary School, there were so many of us that were jumping up and down and cheering because you were not only so deserving, what a role model you have been. But I just want to close with just a couple comments to many of you. The word is this: you have to bring truth to power. Say the word, truth to power. Uh-oh, I didn't hear that, I think. Truth to power. Truth to power. And what that means, and I quote from Dr. King, and you've heard him say, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Education matters. You matter. Your family matters. The community matters. Diversity, all from different cultures and gender, matter. And it becomes truth to power when you speak what matters. And I just want to finally close with this, and I can't tell you, I met you a long time ago over at Tarkanian's house. You don't remember that. A long time ago. And many of you I met from time to time. But I just want to say that it's going to be important. You are the generation that's going to change the world. We were there with Dr. King. We were there with Rosa Parks. By the way, Rosa Parks came here to CSN, and Rosemary Hall was a part of that group that brought Rosa Parks here. And I helped to kind of cart her around a little bit, and I asked her when I was taking her from one spot to the other, I said, what? And she was a little lady, by the way. She was a little lady, maybe 5'3", 5'4". And you know what she said? I said, how did you have the energy and the courage to stand up to those people and say, I'm sitting here at this part of the bus and I'm not getting up? And I said, how'd you do that? She said, you know, I was tired and my feet hurt. And she said, even more than that, she said, it was like Fannie Lou Hamer said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's what we're saying to you. We're counting on you to lift up our community, to lift up each other. The greatest gift we can give each other is our belief in each other. And that's what you can do. I'm so proud of you, and thank you so very much for coming out, and thank you for this leadership and this wonderful team. And Miss Elaine Wynn, we can't thank you enough for what you've done for our community. And you show people, not tell people, you show people the way. So thank you very much. Education is the key.
Again, class, from the very beginning, I said there are no human words that we can say to you, Ms. Wynn. From all of us, our hearts of what you have meant to us. And I said we have to go into another language, Avatar. We see you. All right. All right. Give Ms. Wynn a hand.